In this episode, we are talking about Rat Park and what insight it gives into loneliness. We're going to talk about a conversation between Trevor Noah and Simon Sinek, and then we're going to talk about a few ways to be a better friend. And we're actually going to get into a little bit of Q&A that we were supposed to do last week, but we didn't have time because I was too busy spouting off data and statistics. So this episode is going to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more story-based. If you're new to the show, welcome back to Travis Makes Friends, or welcome to for the first time to the Travis Makes Friends podcast. On the show, I talk to a lot of incredible individuals, and we talk a lot about friendship and loneliness and relationships, but it's also just me kind of modeling the things that I've found to work for me over the last 7 years, 940 plus episodes, and all the connections and interviews I've been able to make happen. And so the interviews kind of act as like the model and how to have conversations with people that you're going to need to know. But then the solo shows that we are now releasing, like this one, have been all about how to tackle loneliness, how to make more friends in your life. So on this episode, we're going to be talking about how to be a better friend. And I just want to start this off by saying sorry to some of my friends, to the people closest to me, my friends, my family, my spouse. I've been selfish in a lot of ways in the last year and a half or so. There's been some life events that have caused me to struggle. My business has been stressful at times. Marriage has been challenging. Kids have been challenging, a 3 and a 5-year-old while running a startup, being married, having a podcast. There's lots of stuff to do, lots of travel, lots of things on the to-do list, and lots of big projects on the horizon, and a lot of great things, but it's been also really stressful, really anxious times. And then you add on top of that some issues with my parents that they're going through in their relationship, and then also the cancer scare, some health things that happened. It's been a crazy year and a half, and I have not been a good friend to the people around me. And when we go through some of these points, you're gonna hear a little bit about why. And frankly, doing this has been a lot of fun for me because it's helped me sharpen my ability to be a better friend. And so hopefully some of the things we talk about on today's episode will help you to be able to do the same. Look, I tend to be one of those people that just doesn't want to bother anybody, with my things, my issues, my problems. I don't want to be a burden. I want to be the strong one. I want to be there for others. And especially I think as a man, you kind of get that a little bit more. But yeah, I think I failed to be a good friend because I was too busy trying to be the strong one and not allowing other people to be there for me and to help me through some of the times that I've been going through. So, like I said, this apology will make a little bit more sense as we go throughout the rest of this episode, especially towards the end of this. So be sure to stick around. Now, last week, the way this all came up, I put out a question on my Instagram to say, hey, what should I talk about on the show? What are some questions you all have regarding these topics? And one friend of mine, Josh Henriquez, he sent me a conversation between Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah that was about friendship and loneliness. And we'll link to that in the description in the show notes, so you can go watch it. It's definitely worth listening to or watching the whole thing. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that they speak about specifically in the episode. So let's go ahead and dive in and start with that. And here's the first clip that we're going to show from that.
So the thing that I'm sort of obsessing about right now is friendship. There's an entire industry to help us be better leaders. There's an entire industry to help us be better parents. There's an entire industry to help us eat better, exercise better, sleep better. And yet there's barely anything on how to be a friend. And if you think about all the mental health challenges that so many of us are facing today, whether it's coping with stress, depression, anxiety, addiction, even obsession with longevity, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all those things.
So this was the first thing that I thought was really interesting. And Simon Sinek, who's one of my favorite thought leaders, brings up a very good point. And he talks about how we have entire industries that are dedicated to leadership, which is one that he's very familiar with and one that he's really played in and become a dominant figure in, in the last decade plus. And then there's, entire industries dedicated toward health and longevity and anxiety and depression and all of these things. The best way to solve all of them potentially is actually just friendship and how to be a better friend. And so I thought it was really interesting that he brought that up as a point at the very beginning of this, because he's not just a random person. He's a guy that's very much involved in a lot of these other industries. And so for him to start to literally start this whole conversation by saying, like, this is my new obsession. I am obsessed about thinking about friends, friendship, how to make more friends, how to be a better friend. I thought was a really telling, because these are the types of thinkers, these are the types of people that have the ability to talk about and think about whatever they want to talk about and think about. And people like Simon Sinek are constantly thinking of the future, constantly thinking of where we're going to be in a few years and what the things we're doing now, how they will have an impact on who we're going to become as individuals, but also as a society as a whole. And so for him to come out and say, I'm obsessed about this, first of all, was refreshing, because I've been starting to feel lately like I'm a crazy person, because like nobody's talking about this and it seems to be such a massive problem. But like he said, that there's no industry that talks about this. And a lot of it's kind of not really taboo. It's just, it's less scientific. People go about it in just like we'll let it happen kind of a way. And I've been kind of fighting this for the last 6 or 7 years, because my show was initially called Build Your Network. And it was a lot about business networking and getting to know people and how relationships can affect your success in business in a very positive way, and also in a very negative way, depending on how you look at it. And like I said, I started to feel like a crazy person, like I was throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall, but nothing was sticking. And the rebuttals that I would get would be this exact thing, where people are trying to, and especially in a business context, are looking at ROI, and there's no way to measure the ROI on the times you spend with friends or the times that you spend building relationships until, like Steve Jobs said, you look back. There's no way to do it looking forward. The only way to do it is looking back. And when you have something that's less tangible, it's in the clouds, it can be really difficult to bring it down to the dirt and then convince people that it's actually a really good use of their time, because they're not seeing that immediate benefit from doing that thing. And so I thought it was really refreshing to hear somebody who tackles massive problems all the time, like Simon Sinek, talking about this in this way. And then the rest of the conversation, Trevor Noah goes on to say a lot of the same things, that this is something that he's been thinking about the most, that he's purposefully the last few years been taking friend trips and bringing, he said his group is up to like 15 or 16 people, where they'll just go to a different country and go hang out, and they'll hang out, have a good time. And they have kind of intentional evenings where they ask a specific question, and then everybody goes around, they discuss that whole thing, and they become friends. They get vulnerable with each other. They allow each other in. They show openness and willingness to discuss things that are difficult to discuss. And I thought that was a really beautiful example of what can happen, especially in male friendships, because that's so the opposite of how most men are. And so Simon Sinek goes on to reference this study after he says that line that I thought was fantastic. He said this in a different part of the conversation. He said, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all of those things. It's the ultimate biohack. Biohacking, longevity, health is, all those things are such popular industries and such popular phrasing that we've heard recently. And I'm one of those people, and I'm not vilifying any of that, by the way. It's all great stuff. I loved reading Dr. Peter Attia's book, Outlive. I think it should be required reading for anybody who values health and longevity, because he's one of the most qualified people to talk about it, and he covers a range of different topics and does it in a very professional, data-backed, but also anecdotal type of a way. And so I thought there was a lot of value to books like that. But to hear this phrase, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all those things, it's something that's never talked about in any of those circles. But it could be the one solution that solves all those other problems. Even when it comes to addiction, this is true. And Simon Sinek goes on to reference that there's some experiments that were done by Dr. Bruce Alexander back in the 1970s. And I thought they were fascinating. So after he kind of referenced them in the episode, in that show, I went and did a little bit of private research to see exactly what they were. So Alexander's experiments in the 1970s have come to be called the rat park. So we talked about in the intro. Researchers had already proved that when rats were placed in a cage all alone with no other community of rats and offered 2 water bottles, one filled with water and the other with heroin or cocaine, the rats would repetitively drink from the drug-laced bottles until they all overdosed and died. All, not some, all overdosed and died. Like pigeons pressing a pleasure lever, they were relentless until their bodies and brains were overcome and they died. But Alexander wondered, is this about the drug, or might it be related to the setting that they were in? Fascinating question. To test his hypothesis, he puts rats in rat parks where they were, among others, and free to roam and play, to socialize, to have sex, to essentially be normal. And they were given the same access to the same 2 types of drug-laced bottles. And when inhabiting a rat park, they remarkably preferred the plain water to the drug-laced water. Even when they did drink from the drug-filled bottle, they did so intermittently, not obsessively, and never overdosed. A social community beats the power of drugs. So it went from always to never. It didn't go from some to some but less. It went from they all overdosed and eventually killed themselves to none of them overdosed. And even though they would sometimes partake, they never did it in a direction that caused them to overdose and die. And so it says, so maybe what we should be teaching our kids is how to be a good friend. Whew, that one kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because I had another conversation recently with a friend of mine, Jimmy Rex. And that episode, I think, should be coming out next week, Monday. He recently wrote a book called Be One, and it comes from the quote from Marcus Aurelius, which is spend no more time thinking about what it means to be a man, just be one, or something like that. I know I'm probably butchering that. And so his book is called Be One, and it's kind of a guide to masculinity in times where masculinity is being vilified. And I thought that was a good conversation to have. So I brought Jimmy on the show. And one of the things that we talked about when we were talking about friendship and especially young men and how they can go make friends better, he talked about, something that we all do, which is we obsess over the how-tos. What can we do to be better? And that's not a bad thing, obviously, but sometimes I think that we can be searching for the wrong keyword. And in my conversation with Jimmy, he mentioned something similar to, he said like something along the lines of, whatever you're searching for, just be it. Like, be it first, and then you'll find it. So if you want the ideal spouse, if you want the perfect spouse, then first you have to be the person who is this perfect spouse to the ideal spouse that you're looking for. If you want amazing friends, you first have to be an amazing friend. So maybe it's time to stop asking Google how to make friends and start asking Google, how do I become a great friend? How do I embody a great friend? What does it even mean to be a great friend? And I think that this conversation is one worth having and one worth asking yourself. So in an effort to make the conversation more about being a good friend instead of making more friends, let's chat about a few ways that all of us can do that. A few ways that all of us can be better friends. Now, it's important to recognize that some of these things are things that I've experienced. Some of these are anecdotal. Some of these are very research-backed. And so I'll kind of work through these one by one. The first thing, facilitate experiences ripe for memories. I first realized this back in probably 2017, 2018. I was first getting into the business world. I just started my podcast, and the podcast was about networking. And frankly, I did it in a way that was more about me discovering more about networking because I was admittedly a networking novice. I was 24 years old. I was coming out of doing door-to-door sales for 5 years. And then previously to that, I was raised in a very strict religious fundamentalist society where I graduated kindergarten, the same campus I graduated from college on, which was also where my church was. I spent my entire life there, very much a bubble. And when I left that world, a lot of my network left. Friends, leadership, authority, people who I looked up to, mentors, all of them were gone from my life in an instant because I made a decision to leave that kind of world behind. And in door to door, it was kind of a singular focus. Like, you are out there knocking doors by yourself. And then a couple of things happened with my mentor that was there. And so when I was coming out of door to door, it was like, man, I was starting to realize I don't have like a core group of people around me that are making me a better person. And if I want to strive for these bigger goals and dreams, then I need to be purposeful about getting these people into my life so that I can spend time with them, learn from them, grow from them, experience what it's like to pick up the crumbs from people who have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt twice, and be around those people. And so that was why I originally created the show. And I started realizing that most of the advice that was out there about quote unquote networking was so terrible. And eventually it led to me changing the name of my show from Build Your Network to Travis Makes Friends. Because networking, I started realizing this is like a buzzword. It's a slimy word. It's a smarmy word because the majority of the people that do it really well, teach it, and engage in the activity of networking, they typically do it in a very bad way. They treat it more like in-person cold calling than they do like building relationships and focusing on genuine connections with people. And so my show became kind of this journey of me discovering what it meant to truly network, to truly build great relationships with awesome people, and then the differences between making friends and professionally networking, and how many of those differences are there. In my opinion, they're actually very, very, very close to being the exact same thing, with the exception of a couple of things, which maybe we'll get into in another episode. But this conversation kept coming about, and then I started hosting my own stuff. So I started going to events all the time, going to meetups, going to chamber meetings, going to all the stuff that you get taught on how to go meet people. And I started realizing that like the majority of the high quality people I really wanted to meet were not doing any of the stuff that everybody said that you should be doing. So I started just studying what those people were doing. I brought them on my show. I would ask them questions, and then I would go do the things that they said they were doing, which ended up working out, pretty well for me. And then I started hosting my own events and my own retreats. And the reason that I started doing it was to do it in a different way, because I noticed that everybody was doing these, especially in the business world. They do these these ballroom conferences, and you're sitting in just a super air conditioned, hotel conference room, and you sit there and you watch speakers for 12 hours a day. And you get a 30-minute lunch break with crappy hotel lunch break food that you have to pay actually a pretty good amount for, by the way. From an event organizer's perspective, it's pretty crazy. But I digress. The food's not good. You're not really enjoying the time together. And then as soon as you really feel like you're getting into a flow of conversation with the person next to you, the event MC starts coming around and be like, all right, everybody wrap up, got to get in for the next speaker, The main reason that these places exist is for the connection. So I started doing these more experiential type retreats and events, and I called them Cool People, Cool Places. And what I really started asking myself and started researching was like, how do people actually build relationships? It's not from meeting in a room at a hotel for 20 minutes. You can establish a connection that way. Sure, you can meet somebody for the first time, get their name, and then find one or two areas of commonality to share with them. Sure, great. But unless you follow up purposefully and intentionally after the event, the odds of you staying really actually connected to those people are really, really, really low, because most of you are just going back to where you're from, and you're probably not all from the same place. So yeah, you connect on social, but last week we learned social media isn't really a connection piece or a relationship builder. It's more of a connection piece itself. And so you can kind of keep in touch with what people are up to, but most people are using it just to brag on themselves and try to sell you their program anyway. So it doesn't become a great, authentic area for you to actually go build relationships with people. So I did these Cool People, Cool Places events, and what I really started to realize was that people build relationships on mutual memories and shared experiences. And so what we did differently at those retreats is, I remember took a group to Thailand in 2018. And what we did differently on those is we had, I want to say 3 to 4 hours of sessions per day. So like we would take the majority of the morning we let people sleep in so they could hang out the night before, which I thought was big. So we would go from maybe 10 o'clock a.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. and we'd have some lunch in the middle. And then the rest of the day was free. So we would schedule certain things. So, group activities that we would all go out to. We went and watched some like Muay Thai fights in Thailand. We went to the big market that they have there in Phuket. And we did a catamaran cruise and took everybody out on the water for a while and just hung out. And then we did a couple nights where we just all went out to the big strip down there. And the memories that we made cultivated genuine relationships and connections that have lasted far beyond being in Thailand. And it led to this discovery, where we should facilitate experiences that are ripe for memories. And so the one thing that we try to do, it happens to be on my birthday, because my birthday happens to be in a great time of the year for people to get away. It's August. My birthday is August 31st. So that's usually around the time where people are, taking a couple of weeks off before the busy fall season anyway. So every year on my birthday, we just decided to start putting together a friends trip. And so we've gone to Lake Tahoe, we've gone to Mexico, we've gone to Park City, we've gone to a few different places just as an excuse to get all of our friends together once a year and just hang out and build more memories and more experiences with each other. So, and then I realized that there's nothing new under the sun, and I didn't discover jack shit because Plato, a few centuries, actually a couple millennia, I think it's millennia, a couple millennia ago, he said, you can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. Plato said that, like, the really smart philosopher guy from a long time ago. So I thought I was like onto something new, because all these other people are doing this hotel ballroom stuff. But turns out Plato knew it, a really long time ago, because there's nothing new under the sun. So put together things that you can connect with people in a way that you can actually play, that you can be with each other in a context that's not just you trying to impress or them trying to impress. So even at my live event in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, Build Your Network Live, we had a VIP day where all the people who were VIP pass holders came in a day early, and we did workshops and sessions throughout the day. But what we did at night is we took them all to the Saw escape room. So they all got to experience going through that escape. They put them, sectioned them off into groups, and they all went through the Saw escape room together to create more of those experiences where you get to see people in like their actual, in the wild, so to speak. Sure, it's the curated wild, but it's the wild nonetheless. And you get more visceral reactions. You get to see other people's emotions and how they interact with each other, and build experiences and memories with each other. And then that night, we got them all tickets to go on the Link, which is the big Ferris wheel here in Vegas, and got them all unlimited drink passes. So what happens is if you get, I think it's $50 or something like that, you can get on the Link and it'll take you can drink. It's an open bar for as long as you are on the ride. It's like a 15, 20-minute ride. So as much as you can drink while you're on that ride. And we got them that. So they all got to hang out. And then the next morning, we didn't start at 6 a.m. sharp. We let them sleep in a little bit. And so they could come in, be a little bit groggy. We provided some coffee and some ways for them to wake up so we could have the rest of the event and do some more education and more connection. But I also did the event at Topgolf so that during the lunch breaks, we didn't take 30-minute hotel room, crappy food lunch breaks. We took 2-hour lunch breaks. We made sure the food was great. We had like shrimp skewers and like actually really good food. Really good food. We had actually really good food. And it was a 2-hour lunch break. And we rented out all the golf bays that would fit for the group that we brought in so that they would actually have time to connect, do an activity together, eat some good food, get some real actual connection in before we brought them back into the space. So facilitate experiences right from memories with you and your friends. And do it without the expectation of receiving anything in return. I think this is a really big caveat because you can't, if you're only doing things so that other people do stuff for you, not only are you going to be disappointed because the expectations are never going to be met, but you're also going to feel potentially more advanced feelings of loneliness because you're hoping to get something out of the thing that you're doing, and that's never going to bring that kind of internal satisfaction or happiness or fulfillment that it is just to do things because you enjoy the company, because you love being with those people, and because you love seeing them being with each other. So do it without the expectation of receiving anything in return. Facilitate experiences right from memories. Number 2, prioritize friendships like work or family. This is something that Trevor and Simon talked about in their talk, which I thought was a really interesting point. We're often encouraged to sacrifice time with friends for the sake of those other two things, work or family. And man, I am so guilty of this. You'll rarely, if ever, cancel something for work or for your family just to be with friends. Man, I struggle with this one big time. And I think for anybody who wants like more out of life, who's really ambitious, who wants to get up and like go get things done, we get used to sacrifice. We get used to doing the sacrificial thing. But we never are sacrificing for maintaining and growing existing friendships or new friendships. It's not something that's trained into us. We think that that's kind of a waste of time, or we see a time with a friend on a calendar and something comes up for work, and that's the person who will understand more, quote unquote, is the friend, not the business contact for this big opportunity that you have. So what do? We say to our friend, hey, not going to be able to make it. This big meeting came up. Let's connect later. And we know that they're going to be like, yeah, sure, man, whatever. We'll see you next time. But that is not living the ethos of prioritizing your friendships. And if you're struggling with mental health, stress, anxiety, lack of sleep. And then it's affecting your nutrition. It's affecting your physical health. You're starting to gain weight. You're inflamed all the time. You don't prioritize the gym or walking. And that's feeding into your work and your career. Even if you want to look at it from this almost like twisted point of view, it's still better for your work and for your career to maintain and build better friendships, because that's also going to, there's no way that being socially isolated and alone is going to benefit any part of your life. So the more you push these things away for the sake of building this other thing, the more likely you are to not get that thing anyway, right? And this goes for family too. This might be just a conversation that you're going to have with a spouse, that whether it's your husband, your wife, your lifelong partner, whatever it is, this is going to be a conversation you're going to have where it's just, hey, sometimes I need to get away with friends. I'm very, very lucky to have a wife who understands that. We both give each other latitude in that sense to hang out with our friends. In fact, a couple months back, my friends and I took a trip to Nashville, and it was just at a crazy time in life. You know, my business had been causing a lot of stress. I was a week and a half past cancer surgery, and another friend that came out with us was going through a divorce. Another friend was in the middle of a career change and a breakup, and I realized when we took that trip, it was like, man, this is the first time in a very long time where this was just me and like three of my closest friends being us. There's no pressure. There's no fear of being canceled for a joke that you make to your buddy. There's no pretense. We had no agenda. One of my friends brought his I almost said Switch, the Nintendo Switch. And we played Super Smash Brothers for like a couple hours every day, which is like my favorite video game growing up, and really the only one I ever cared to get any good at. Call of Duty for a little bit, but it's stopped playing that one a while back. But Super Smash Brothers was like my jam growing up, and we played on every gaming system, like all of them growing up. Nintendo 64, the GameCube, the Wii, the one that was after the Wii that I forget. I think there was another one. I'm not crazy, right? There was a Wii, and then there was a Wii something else, and then there was the Switch. I don't know. Either way, we played it on every gaming system. It's one of my favorite games, and we just set it up and played. We didn't have a ton. We didn't schedule out our whole days. We cooked up some steaks on the grill at the Airbnb we were at. We drank too much beer probably. We hung out and just got to be friends. And when I came back, man, I felt so much more refreshed than even though I was tired from staying up late and getting drunk with my buddies, I came back feeling so refreshed and recharged and re-energized, so much more than even when I go to a great business conference and connect with great business friends. And it's not even to say that these are bad people or anything. Like, these are some of, like, my business friends are also great friends, and I have a lot of, I'm lucky to have a great network in that world. But it's just different. It felt different coming back. So, man, it was so great. And I am glad that I had a conversation with my wife about it. And I am very glad and very grateful that she's someone who not only just goes like, okay, you can go, but then has this almost like social debt between us, because like I got to go on a guy's trip. And so now I come back home and she's, expecting that I do 55 things to make up for the fact that she let me go. It was nothing like that at all. She genuinely cares about me and loves me and wants me to have those types of close friendships with my friends. So I was very lucky to have that, and I think that it's something that we should all try to do a little bit more. Is look at your calendar. I challenge every one of you: look at your calendar, look at the things that you have coming up, and ask yourself, how many of these things are with friends? How many of these things are just no agenda hangouts with people who matter to me, who I've known for a long time, who we accept and love each other no matter what? And if there's nothing on the calendar right now, try to put some things on the calendar. I know you're busy. I get it. Look, like I said, I got a wife. I got a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old. We just opened up a Everbowl franchise in Las Vegas, which is taking up a ton of my time and a lot of my wife's time. I have my software company and agency. I have my podcast that I release 2 episodes a week on, that I travel for, that I have sponsors for. I get it. Life is busy. And then when you have a bunch of other friends who have all those same things as well, it's so easy to go months and months and months without ever spending any time connecting with the people who matter to you the most. And then you wake up in 30 years from now with no friends and wonder why it happened. Well, it happened because you let it happen. Don't let it happen. Look at your calendar, even if it's got to be 6 months out, because that's the first day that all of you can make it work. Put it on the calendar. Schedule out time with the people that are closest to you, and do not reschedule it because of work. Do not reschedule it because of a kid's soccer practice. Like, you need to maintain and build friendships yourself. And you got to make time. You got to prioritize it. So facilitate experiences, write from memories, prioritize friendships like you would work or family. And then here's the big one that I talked about in this episode. And again, this is not all encompassing by any means. We're going to keep diving into this topic as we continue doing these episodes every week. But here's a big one that they talk about in their conversation as well. Ask for help. We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it. And this brings me back to the apology that I made at the beginning of this video. I can be somebody who is very good at offering help. And maybe not as much as I should, but I feel like I am genuinely somebody who wants to help people, who wants to be there for people. But allowing other people to be there for me is not something that I'm very good at. And I hate to keep bringing this up all the time because some of you might be getting sick of it, but it's so top of mind for me and was such a visceral experience that I can't help but think about it when this stuff comes up. But even when I had cancer a few months back, I wouldn't even allow my wife and my mom and the people who love me most to be there for me, because I had this twisted sense of masculine strength that I felt I had to uphold, because I felt that I needed to be there for them. And I don't necessarily think that's a terrible thing. And it's something that I'm happy to do, to be there for the people in my life who matter most to me. But I also recognize now and understand that it's actually a really selfish activity to not allow those closest to you to be there for you when you are going through the thick of struggle. Struggle is the most human experience that we all have, no matter the length of time, the degree, the duration, where you started, where you came from. Struggle is a universal experience. And if you do not tell the people that are closest to you that you're struggling, you're robbing them of the ability to be a friend to you and to strengthen their connection to you. And I think that's detrimental. And if you are not willing to share those things with the people around you, who are you willing to share them with? And so that's why I wanted to start this episode off by apologizing, because I don't think that I've been a good friend in that sense. I think that I've been rather terrible at that. And I don't know what it is, I'm sure something psychological from my childhood, or I don't know, something. But vulnerability and asking for help, especially in that context, is something that does not come naturally to me at all. And it's something that I need to work on a lot. So I legitimately want to apologize for everybody, all my close friends and family. If you're watching this, listening to this, that's something that I'm going to try to do a little bit better. So, all right, now let's go ahead and jump into some Q&A and a real quick recap on those things. Facilitate experiences, write from memories, prioritize friendships like work or family, and be willing to ask for help when you're going through something. And don't be the selfish asshole friend that I've been in some points. So, okay, Q&A. We are running short on time, so we'll probably only get to one or two of these. But by the way, if you want a question answered on the show, at Travis Chappell on Instagram, CHAPPELL, just send me a DM over there or look for my weekly stories. I'll be posting a form in there where you can submit your question that will be read here on the show. And we'll send some love over to your Instagram account from the podcast. So, oh, and by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, just know I'm in this for the long haul. So if you see like 250 views, hey, doesn't bother me. I'm doing this for the next few years. So I know it's a long haul. The podcast was the same way, but the podcast does really well now. We get tens of thousands of downloads an episode on the podcast. But YouTube's a different beast. So we're here to tackle it, and we're here to hang out in the meantime, And so if you're watching this and you're one of the first people to be watching some of these episodes, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know that it takes a tribe to get a movement started, and just know that I'm here for it, and I appreciate you for being here for it. And when you look back in 5 years from now and the channel has 1 million subscribers, be happy that you were one of the first ones. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these questions. Oh, and if you don't have Instagram or something, you just email me, travis@travischapel.com, travis@travischapel.com. Email me there with a question, and I'll answer it here on the show. So number 1, Dave Berlin, @Dave Berlin, Burlin. What's up, Dave? Dave asked, what are your favorite questions to ask to get to the real root of connection? I love this question, and it gives me opportunity to say something first. I think one mistake that I made early on, I think a lot of people make, is when you start doing some of this like quote unquote networking or relationship building on purpose, you get into small talk first, and then you do it for 3 or 4 months and you go, man, I hate small talk. And then people just try to skip small talk and they go directly into these like really deep questions. Like, what are your biggest fears? And it's like, bro, we just met. Like, my beer hasn't come back from the bartender yet, and you're asking me what my deepest fears are. You are not somebody that I am willing to share those things with. So don't make the mistake like I did of thinking that small talk or initial, kind of wading in the water questions are a waste of time, because they're absolutely not. It's a foundation for a relationship. And if you don't have a foundation, the building's going to fall over. And it's the same thing with any relationship or friendship. It's like, you might get really deep with that person, but you might walk away being like, man, that was so cool. I asked great questions and we went so deep with that, and then that person's leaving being like, I can't believe I just shared all those things with somebody I just met. That felt really strange, really weird. And like, they're emotionally like, abused almost. They might just walk away feeling like slimy and gross. And remember that people will never remember what you say. They'll never remember that brilliant question that you thought you asked them. They will only ever remember how you make them feel. So if they leave the conversation with this feeling of like, oh, I felt kind of gross. Like I felt like that person was asking me questions I didn't really want to answer, but I didn't really know how to say no. And so I just kind of kept answering, and now I just feel exposed and bad and gross. They're going to remember that. They're going to assign that feeling to you, and they're never going to talk to you again. So again, you may think that you're going places because you might get them to answer the question. But just have some self-awareness and understand that like, that's not how relationships work. Do not skip the quote unquote small talk at the beginning just to go deep into the, questions you really want to ask. Trust is built over time. So you have to give the relationship time. Now, assuming you're hanging out with someone who you've already kind of built that foundational friendship with, which I think where Dave's question's coming from here. Because I know Dave's a good guy, and I know he does a lot of this stuff. So here are some good questions to ask. And think of these more as discussions, by the way. I know I'm guilty of this because I'm a podcast interviewer. And so sometimes I get in conversation with people and I can switch into interviewer mode where I'm just constantly asking questions. And it could probably almost come off like I'm a journalist and I'm trying to, pry into their lives a little bit too much. So try to think of these more as discussions. Like, think of yourself more as a conversationalist rather than an interviewer, and just pose some questions, let them get their thoughts out, and then speak into those thoughts as well. Make sure whenever you're asking questions in these types of contexts, make sure they're open-ended. That's the other overarching piece of advice. But here's some specific questions that I think are good questions to kind of get into some deeper, good quality conversations. First off, and these are in no particular order, by the way. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important? I think this is a worthy question. This to me tells you, like, you want to ask questions that will engage in conversation, sure, but you also want to ask questions that will allow you to start seeing the values that somebody has in their life, because that's really ultimately going to tell you how well you're going to get along in the future. So when was the last time you changed your mind about something important? If it's like never, I've never changed my mind, maybe that's good for you. For me, that's not like a red flag, but I guess a yellow flag at least. Like, it makes me kind of be like, oh, interesting. Why do you think that is? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's something that would be alarming to me. And especially, if they're 20 years old, that might be different. But if they're 40 or 50 and it's like, I don't think I've ever really changed my mind about anything important, I think I'm right. It's like, okay, well, good for you. But I don't know if we're going to be like besties, because like, I think I'm wrong a good amount of times, and I enjoy getting information that's contradictory to the information that I have. When I can change something about myself, even though it hurts a little bit, I'd rather like change into a correct position than just bite further down into an incorrect position because I believe it's correct and I'll never change on it. So that's a question I like to ask. When was the last time you changed your mind about something important? When was the last time you got something that you wanted? I think is a good question because first of all, it'll help you. It'll help tell you something that they wanted, and this doesn't have to be like a big life goal. It could just be like, oh yeah, I got a ping pong table. I always wanted one of those. You know what I mean? Like it could literally be something like that. But it will tell you that, hey, that person likes playing ping pong. Maybe I like playing ping pong. Maybe we could play ping pong together sometime. It allows you to engage in commonality without just being like, so what's your hobbies? Like these are the questions you're going to find on, if you go online and just like search this, you're going to see questions like that. Like, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do in your free time? And it's not like those questions are bad to ask. It's just, to me, they're the questions that everybody else asks. And so I always try to think about like, what are some questions that I can ask that get people off of autopilot? And that's something I learned from being a podcast interviewer is people have like canned responses to questions that get asked frequently. So if you can be somebody who asks questions that are infrequent, then you're not going to get the autopilot scripted answers. You're going to get genuine, real answers that they have to think about. And that can allow you to engage and connect with somebody a little bit more. When was the last time you got something you wanted? You can straight up ask this one. What is one of your core values? Like, what would you say, what would you say is one of your core values? Have you ever given that any thought? And, I did this with a friend of mine. Well, I didn't ask him the specific question. It was just that I was helping them start a podcast. His name is Jeff. And turns out Jeff's first core value in business and life in general for his companies, his first value is make friends. Hello, like my show is called Travis Makes Friends. So for him to be like, oh yeah, core value of mine is making friends. I'm like, I think we might be able to get along, bro. Like I think that we have a couple of commonalities like here to begin with. If this is one of your core values that you talk about all the time, it's like we might get along. If you could spend time with someone from the past, present, and future, who would they be? This tells you a lot about this person. It tells you some of the people that they would, look up to, some of the people who they admire, some of the people that they would want to ask questions to. I think the and why is a good question to ask at the end of that. So like, who would it be? And then why would it be them? Because somebody might be like, oh, Adolf Hitler. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that they want to be Adolf Hitler, but you might want to probe a little bit further on that one. Just in case, you never know in today's landscape or culture what people want to be and what they value. So if they say Adolf Hitler, I used to ask this question on my podcast a long time, and I had one or two people say this exact answer. And when I asked why, it was like, I just would like to try to understand somebody like that. Like how did you arrive at these conclusions or whatever? And I was like, okay. I mean, if I'm going to pick somebody from the past, it's certainly not going to be him, but I can at least understand and appreciate your perspective on that. But yeah, so that's going to tell you a little bit about that past, and then present, who's alive today that you'd want to have a conversation with, and then future, somebody in the future. Obviously, not going to be like prominent figure, but like for me, it'd be like, oh, I'd love to have a conversation with my great grandkid. That would be super cool. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about that person. If you could trade lives with anyone for a month, who would you choose? I think this is important because it teaches you who they aspire to be. And the answer might surprise you, by the way, because like I wouldn't necessarily choose like a business person, which is the world that I'm in. Like I would go more like an actor or comic or something like that. And that answer might surprise some people, and that would give them the ability to be like, oh, why that person? Why do you think that is? Why not, whatever, Elon Musk or whatever. And then it would give me the opportunity to talk about some of the things that I actually enjoy that are outside of the scope that I'm doing. Just don't know how to make a living doing them yet, like acting or producing or directing or some of those things I think would be cool to try my hand at someday. So, yeah, I think that's a really good one. If you could trade lives with anyone for a month, who would you choose and why would you choose them? What's something that you have done on your bucket list, and what's something that you want to do still? Again, just gives you more experiences to talk about. When people have crossed something off their bucket list, it probably means something to them. And then when they are telling you something that's on their bucket list, it tells you something else that is meaningful to them. Like when I had Jimmy Rex on my show, who I've already mentioned in this episode, he mentioned that it's on his bucket list to throw the first pitch out at every MLB stadium in the country. And now I didn't ask this at the time because I already know Jimmy pretty well. And I know that baseball was an important part of his life growing up, and he played at a high level of baseball, I believe in college. and it was something that was really, really important to him. It's something that still is important to him and is a value in his life. So if you didn't know that about that person, that bucket list thing would tell you a little bit about them, and you'd be able to ask more questions and probe a little bit further based on those answers. And then here's one more just for fun. How would those closest to you describe you? Sometimes it can be difficult to describe yourself, but if you ask somebody, hey, from the frame of your closest friends, what would they say about you? It's much easier for me to objectively answer what my friends would say about me than it is for me to answer what I would say about me. Because sometimes I don't know what to say about me. I don't know what it's interesting to people. But if you're like, hey, how would your friends describe you? I'd be like, oh, well, that's more of an objective answer rather than a subjective answer. And again, it'll tell you like, oh, the people in this person's life that are closest to them would describe them this way. That's probably an accurate or close to accurate picture of who they are and how they show up in their closest friendships. Now, again, notice none of these questions are like, what are your deepest fears and regrets? Like, I just think, I think that, not to say that you can't talk about those things, but I think that you should have some self-awareness before you ask questions like that. And, respect people's boundaries. Think about how much time you've already spent with them. Like, again, people never remember what you say. They'll always remember how you make them feel. So just keep that in mind as you go throughout those relationships. Okay, we got time for one more, and then we'll close up. All right. How do you keep in touch with a new friend you're excited about without seeming clingy? Now, this question came from Joe Gatto, from Impractical Jokers. And I assume it's because Joe and I met, we had a conversation on the podcast, which is a great one. You can go listen to it if you haven't checked it out. And I assume, Joe, you asked this question because you just wanted to keep hanging out with me. You had a great time, thought I was cool. You just don't want to freak me out. It's okay, Joe. I'm giving you permission. Just text me next time you come through Vegas. We'll go grab a drink and something like that. Now, it may take me a few weeks to get back to you. I'm a pretty busy guy, but it is what it is, Joe. It is what it is. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, this is a good question. There's something to think about. And the nice thing about friendship, to me, the first thing I'd say about this is that it's not exclusive. It's not like romantic relationships where it's like if you go make friends with another person, your first friend is going to be upset, unless it's like your bestie, right? Or like your bromance. It's a little bit different. But if you're a dude, I would start with just random things. Just to be like, oh, it was cool that we connected on these things. I saw this video or this meme online. I'm always open for people to send me stuff. Like, just DM it to me. Like, you have my Instagram at Travis Chappell. If we met, you have my phone number, you have my Instagram, assuming you have some way to contact me. If we talked about something, that was a mutual point of contact that was funny or something like that, shoot me a video. Maybe we talked about golf and you found this video of Kyle Berkshire, that long drive competition guy, and you want to, and you thought it was cool that he, hit this many yards on this hole or whatever. Just send it to me. Stuff like that. I don't think people get upset about those things. Like, oh, cool. Thanks for sending this over. And then, if you're a guy, especially, I can't speak to the women as much here, but meeting up for something that's mutually interesting, a workout, a walk, a hike, something like that. Usually multiple people, hey, me and a friend or two are going to go do this hike thing. Would you like to come join us? We'd love to have you come join us. Try to always make it a group of people, just because, it'll be easier to connect with people that way. And it feels a little bit like less pressure because if you don't know somebody really well, it can be sometimes awkward to hang out with just the two of you. So if you have another friend or two, invite them out. Get some after dinner drinks. I learned that from I Love You Man, by the way. Andy Samberg is telling Paul Rudd what to do and what not to do with dudes. And he's like, after dinner drinks is a great way to do it, because there's nothing romantic about after dinner drinks. So after dinner drinks, if you play video games, invite them to your next session with the boys playing video games online. Do some activities with some people that you're already friends with, and then invite that new person along into the group. Just don't treat it like a sale. I'm just saying, like, put something on the calendar, but don't treat it like you're selling them. Like, don't treat it like, hey, what time Tuesday is going to work for you? Like, don't use these like selling tactics. I remember like this literally just happened to me like a few months ago. This random dude at the gym who's a nice enough guy. And he talked to me a couple of times, and, clearly just somebody trying to make friends and stuff like that. And he plays pickleball all the time, and he loves pickleball. And I never played, but I had a paddle, but I never did the work of actually going out and learning how to play. Still haven't, by the way. And so he was like, hey, let's play pickleball sometime. I was like, okay, oh yeah, cool, man. It works for me. But he's an older single guy, no kids, not a ton of responsibilities. He works from home. And I have, like I've said a couple times on this, just a busy schedule. And so he basically kind of roped me in. He's like, well, let's put it on the calendar now. And it wasn't for 6 weeks out or 4 weeks out. It was for like 3 days later on a Tuesday morning at like 7 a.m. And I was hesitant to say yes, but he kept pushing for it. So I was like, okay. I was like, well, I used the word tentative. I was like, okay, well, let's tentatively put it on the calendar then. Let's pencil it in, because the best thing about pencil is you can erase it. Back from my appointment setting days. And so he basically says, okay, puts it in the calendar. And then we go throughout the next couple of days. I completely forget about it. But apparently it's something that he's, been doing with quite a few people there, just trying to get more people to play pickleball with. And the night before he texted me, but he texted me late and I was already in bed asleep. So I did not respond until I got his text in the morning, but I didn't check my phone until I was at the gym. So I'm at the gym and I open my phone and I get a text from him that was the night before, which I did not confirm. He was like, hey, confirming our, appointment for tomorrow to play some pickleball. And I did not confirm the appointment. And then notice I'm already calling it an appointment because that's how it felt. It felt like it was just like kept forcing it on me. And so I didn't confirm. And then the next day he shoots me a text and was like, I texted him because I saw that he had texted me the night before. I was like, hey man, sorry. I had to drop my kids off at school or something. It made me late. And so I can't, do it this morning. And then all he replies back is a very like short text that was something like, I wish you would have told me I could have scheduled with somebody else. And then that was the last time that we talked. This is a guy that like talks to everybody. He's always trying, like he talked to me like almost every day at the gym. And then I didn't show up to this one pickleball thing that he like forced me to schedule that I purposefully mentioned was tentative, and then didn't confirm the confirmation text. And then he was that mad about it. So, I don't know if he was excited about being friends with me or whatever, but he clearly tries to do that with a lot of people and likes doing it through pickleball. But he was too overwhelming and he tried to put it in my calendar. It felt, like I said, it felt like a sales call. It felt like you're an appointment setter and you're trying to close me on a deal. And if we play together, you're going to try to like sell me into your MLM or something like that. Like it just felt weird and slimy. So I didn't end up hanging out with him. And we've talked maybe like once or twice since then, and this was like 9 months ago. And I see this dude like at least 3 or 4 times a week in the gym. That's what not to do. Play it cool. But then also try to do something that's interesting, and try to do something that's more interesting kind of for the both of you, rather than like trying to convince them to do something that you really like, that you have no idea if they'll enjoy or not. And you can do that maybe the 3rd or 4th time you hang out, but like the first time, like I said, make it easy for them to say yes. And then hit them up every once in a while. And if they say no, hey, no big deal. Mind if I hit you up next time we go out in case you want to go? If they say yes, great. Then do that. But just make it typically in a group setting, typically something that's a mutual connection that is going to, go over well with them. And then don't treat it like a sale, just let it play out. Relationships are a long-term game. Don't force them. Because if you force them, it's never going to work that well. So wish we had more time to answer some more questions. We'll make sure that we get to that next week. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button. Listen on Spotify. Be sure to rate us over there. We'd love to get more ratings on Spotify. We'd love to get more reviews on Apple Podcasts, and then more subscriptions on the YouTube channel. So if you enjoyed this, thank you so much for tuning in, for sticking around to the end. And, as always, remember to leave every relationship better than you found it. I'm opening up my calendar in an effort to make more friends with all of you. So if you're watching this, listening to this, go to travischappell.com/chat. It's no agenda. I'm not trying to sell you anything. 15-minute, no agenda connection call just to say what's up, and to hear what we can potentially do better on the show here. To say thanks for listening and see how we can help support each other. So travischappell.com/chat. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Catch you in the next episode. Peace out.